Good afternoon, everybody. How are we doing today? Welcome to the Bomber Past, Present, and Future. The Oak Lodge History Detectives are proud to co-sponsor this with the B-17 Alliance. And my name is Mike Schmier. I'm the president of the Oak Lodge History Detectives. We like to think that we are the go-to organization in the Oak Lodge area if you're interested in knowing more about the local history. And that's the local history between the area of Milwaukee and Gladstone, and the river to the west, and about Kellogg Creek to the east. We started in 2009, the Oak Lodge History Detectives, and incorporated as a 501c3 in 2011. I'm still trying to figure out how the heck it happened, but I've been the president ever since. So I'm stuck with it for a while. The Oak Lodge History Detectives is charged with trying to research, preserve, and share the history of the Oak Lodge area. And we do that through several means. One is when we have meetings. We try and have meetings, but COVID kind of interrupted that. So we haven't been having too many meetings for a while, and there's very few meeting spaces available at the moment. That's going to improve. We also have a brand new website that you may be interested in. Information about that is at the back of the room. It's www.oaklodgehistory.org. There's even a QR code for you techie people. We paid to have a whole new website redone recently, and so we keep putting new information on that website as often as I have time to do it. So anyway, so the Oak Lodge History Detectives is your go-to place for local history, and we are proud today to be sharing this event with the B-17 Alliance. If you're interested, if you like my t-shirt, we do have t-shirts for sale back there. I know you all want one, right? Right. Wrong. So anyway, today's program is about the bomber and the B-17 Allowance and their efforts to preserve it. We do accept donations, and at least I can speak for the history detectives. Our sole income is through donations. So with that, I will turn it over to the lady that we know and love so much, Punky Scott.
Thank you, Mike. This is just such a treat to get to catch up with everybody, and I grew up, of course, with the B-17 my entire life, 99% of it anyway, and so I thought, well, maybe I would share with you, those of you who don't already know or haven't heard the story about my dad bringing the airplane here and its events that have carried on all these years, and some of how I grew up with it and pumped a hell of a lot of gas. I got my uniform on, and that's why I'm wearing this. Anyway, my dad and mom, after the war, were both in the gasoline business, not out here. My dad had a gas station on 7th and Belmont, and my mom had one on 34th and Division. So as a little girl, I grew up helping my mom pump gas at the ripe old age of about 5 or so. And I was sharing with one of the guys about how at that time oil came from a drain down from up above, and it came into a glass container with we put a nozzle on it, and that's how oil came. So I got to pump the oil into these glass containers and that kind of thing. So my mom, we had lived in a 23-foot trailer house for years. Can you imagine living in 23 feet? You didn't even have a bathroom in the trailer, but there was a building next to it, and that had a bathroom, and then it had a storage space, so we had all kinds of things, including our bathtub, which was a steel, just a big square thing that Mom would put hot water in there, and that's what we scrubbed up in, so boy, was it not good. And as a little kid, I didn't know any better, so, but I got to know all the people that lived in the blocks around, and in fact, that's how I got into business in the first place. Mom had a customer who raised chickens, and he had all kinds of eggs, and he came to her one time and said, how about if you sell my eggs here? I need to sell them. And she said, no, I don't want to, but my daughter might. And I had a wagon, so I was allowed to go around the block that she was in and the block next to it, because she knew all the people and she knew I'd be safe. And so I would take their order, and then I would drag this wagon around with the eggs in it and drop them off at their houses, and they would order for the next week, and I learned how to operate a business, and I made 5 cents a dozen. That was my profit. So wow, I was doing all right. And in fact, I wanted to be paid in nickels. That was the only way I wanted money. And I have a picture that I couldn't find, but I know I've got one, of this giant jar that was filled with nickels. And I grew up in a time when polio was a serious problem, and I donated my jar of nickels to the polio fund to try to come up with a treatment for it. And there's a picture of me holding this giant thing full of nickels. So anyway, Mom and I lived there. Dad had his gas station on 7th and Belmont, as I said, and he got into aviation. And he had some buddies who were pilots and all that. Now, my dad was a nonconformist, and I'm sure you heard that many times. If you told him, no, you can't do something, he was going to prove you wrong, no matter what. And so he had private airplanes. He flew, as a little girl, I got to ride with my mom and dad in those airplanes, and I'd sit on her lap and be hooked in, strapped in. And I can remember one time, he loved to hunt and fish, and we went somewhere down in far South Oregon to go hunting, and I'm sitting on her lap, and he's landing in a cornfield that had been plowed, but boy, it was rough. And I said, Daddy, are we crashing? I couldn't see out the windows to know. No, it's all right, you're safe. It was crazy. Anyway, he had 4 airplanes, private airplanes, but they were all single engine. So he had a P-51 Mustang, which, crazy thing, he flew it under the Oregon City Bridge, the old arch bridge, came down over the falls, went under the bridge, barely cleared the trees where Clackamat Park is now. And my mom, he told her about it, and she said, Arthur, that's too much plane for you. And so he sold it, and the guy that bought it from him crashed it into a mountain soon thereafter and killed him and totaled the plane. So yeah, it was too much. But Dad had a BT-13, AT-6, a Kenner K-5, and of course that P-51. So he knew how to fly single-engine aircraft. Now the other thing was he liked to gamble. And I think that was just, growing up from his youth, that was what he did. His grandfather was a bootlegger and a logger down in the Willamette Valley, and my dad, I can remember him telling me about how they would come to Portland with this truck that had a big tank behind the front seats, and it was filled with booze. And then they also brought crawfish, crawdads, and they would bring those to Portland, and that's when he would remember his dad selling the alcohol and the crawdads to Jake's Crawfish. So just fun stories of his connections. Anyway, he was at one of his own parties way back when, and playing gambling with his buddies, and he said, you know, I'm thinking about buying myself a B-17 and putting it over a gas station. And his friend said, what a stupid idea, how in the hell? I bet you can't do that. Well, that was the wrong thing to ever tell him, and on a $5 handshake and a bet, he agreed he was going to do it. Then he turned to one of the other guys that was there who he knew had tons of money, because the guy was a shyster kind of. He didn't act like that, but he had profits that he made. And Dad turned to him and said, Bob, you got any money on you? Bob said, yeah, how much you need? Dad said, I need $15,000, and the guy had it on him in cash. But if you think about it, they didn't trust banks, they didn't use credit cards, they didn't do much with checks. So anyway, on a handshake and agreement, Dad borrowed the money from him. Calls my mother and said, I'm on my way to Oklahoma, I'm going to buy myself an airplane. My mom, she was the most patient woman in the world, I'll tell you. She came from a very strict English family, not from England, but she raised in Monmouth. And but she was the calming force of Mom and Dad, and he was just this wild, crazy guy. Anyway, he said, I'm going, and so he got a ride out to the airport. He knew where they were and how much they were, because he had two friends who had purchased B-17s and immediately sold them for a profit. So he knew how much they were, $13,750. So he gets a ride out to the airport, gets a flight to Altus, Oklahoma, and goes out there and gets acquainted with the War Assets Administration guy and says, hey, I want to buy an airplane. I want to buy a B-17. And the guy said, okay. And he didn't think to ask him if he knew how to fly anything with more than one engine. And so Dad bought it for that money. And then he went out to be in the airplane and practice what he was doing. And he had a flyer or a book of how to fly a B-17. So he's trying to read that and do whatever. And so he decides he can do it. So he takes off and he's flying around the air base there, but he thought he should bring up the landing gear and then bring it down just to make sure he knew how to do that. So he brings up the landing gear. He couldn't get it to go back down. That plane had seen a lot of action during the war, and so he can't get it to come down. And he tries, there's a way to hand crank the landing gear, but he couldn't see that it had any results. So he ends up just gearing it back and just slides it in, skids in, and crashes it into another parked B-17. And fortunately wasn't killed. But so he walked up to the headquarters and admitted to the guy that he didn't have a clue what he was doing. And the guy said, do you want another airplane? Dad said, well, yeah, but I only have $1,500. So the fellow turns to his secretary and said, have you written up a bill of sale yet on that B-17, the one that he crashed? No, sir. Worst case of wind damage I've ever seen. And wrote it off as wind damage and sold him the one we have today for $1,500, which was brand new. It has the lowest airtime of any B-17 in the world. So then the guy says, you probably are going to need some help taking that plane home. So yeah, he calls my mom and has her send down two buddies that both had experience during World War II flying in B-17s. So they came down and he had them bring a case of whiskey. And the purpose of the whiskey was they bribed the volunteer fire department to use their wobble pumps on their old fire trucks to siphon fuel out of the crash, the ones he bought and the one that he crashed into, and probably a few others on the, but anyway, he bribed him with whiskey, and that way he had fuel to try to fly home, which they did, and they didn't have to refuel until much further closer to, I want to say, California. And so then he wrote a bad check for that. But if you think about it, checks didn't clear in overnight like they do now, so he had time to get home and get it covered and made it good. Well then, so he landed it out there in Troutdale, And then he found the property where we originally were, which was right there on McLaughlin, but not at the site we ended up on. We were a little bit further south, about where, where the ice cream store is and that, so if you're familiar at all with the layout. And so he leased the ground there for 20 years. And Mike did some great pictures. And this is the crew, and there I am in my uniform. So we have my mom and me and my dad, my cousin right here, and his dad, my dad's brother, and the Lindemann family, and my high school classmates. So it was fun to, Mom and Dad hired a lot of young people. And one interesting story, I don't want to bore you, but it's kind of fun. This one fellow, he worked at pump gas for us early on, and he was really good, and he was very influenced by aviation and with my dad. And so when he left working for us, he went to work as a commercial first he went in the military, and then he went in as a commercial airline pilot. And he's still around now. He lives in Vancouver, and we talk to him frequently. He lived up off of Oatfield Road, and I've driven up there to where the family home was, and his brother liked to fly, and he would fly off of the edge of the property, and the drop-off was down where Lake Road is below there. He'd just fly off out into the air, and then when he came in, he'd come in and land, angle in, and made it just fine. And the name of the property up there now is Piper Cub Avenue. Isn't that a kick? Yeah. Anyway, Dad was a real promoter of his business, and he did all kinds of fun things to kind of make people happy that they could come and buy fuel from him. And he particularly cut the price on Fridays for the weekend, and people knew that. And we'd have lineups of cars from the gas station all the way down past where the Elks Lodge is now, waiting to come in and buy fuel. Well, Dad would have treats for them. Little kids always got a lollipop no matter what day they were there, but on the weekends, particularly on Fridays in the afternoon, they got Coke floats, or we had a farm down in Monmouth area, and we'd have corn when the crop was there, and we'd have huge pile of corn there, and people could just come and help themselves all they wanted to. We had live music, so people could dance and get out of their car after they got their fuel. And so it just was a great promoter. And I can remember at one time we sold gasoline for 19.9. Just think how different it is now. It's crazy. Anyway, Dad was affiliated with Texaco early on, and then he became an independent gas dealer because he felt like they were charging him too much and he could buy it himself cheaper. So he started hauling fuel from British Petroleum, which was out there, had a spot out on St. Helens Road along the river there. And he would go, and he bought a truck, and he would go out there and get his own fuel and bring it and put it in the ground, and he saved a ton of money by doing that. Well, because he kept cutting the price, his volume of sales kept going up and up. So he increased the gas pumps that he had, and ultimately he had 24 double pumps, so 48 pumps. And we pumped 6 million gallons a year out of that one gas station. It was the largest volume single unit gasoline station in the world. 6 million gallons. Can you imagine? So he was hauling in continually all day long, and he'd drive a lot at night, and he was just a trooper, but he kept it going. So it was a fun experience for me as a kid. And I don't know if you remember some of the businesses that were along McLaughlin. There was the Fireside Restaurant. Maybe you don't know about that one. There was the Castle Restaurant in Gladstone. And all kinds of businesses all along. Piggly Wiggly, when he first moved out there, Piggly Wiggly was on the corner. So things changed a lot over the years. So anyway, he was on 20 years on the original property, and then the lease was up, so he needed to move. And he didn't know where he was going to go. And then one day, this elderly couple came, and they said, you know, we own some property just down here a little ways, and our son is not interested, and so would you like to buy our property? And so Dad went down and looked at, well, geez, it was just where we are now. And it had a motel in the front and a bunch of trees on the back. And so he bought it from them, and then he had to take out the trees so we'd have some property space there, and the gas tanks and all that, and he had to put those in. Well, he grew up helping do dynamite blasting with his grandfather, and so he knew how to do that himself. And I can remember he'd have a hold up where he was going to put the gas tanks, and he'd put a mattress over it when he'd light the dynamite. Can you imagine that? Nobody got hurt, so that blam, you know. So it was just crazy. So anyway, he got it there, and then had it pretty well established, and moved the airplane over, and they didn't take it apart. They brought it more through the back instead of out on the highway. Didn't have to, it wasn't that far. And he had a trumpet player sit in the front seat in the cockpit and play the trumpet while they rolled the plane over. So just, he was a real promoter of fun things, so it was crazy. So anyway, I have some things I'd like to quickly share with you. He had his own credit card, so if you bought gas from him, you got to use your own credit card, have your name on it, which I thought was unique. He had his oil in oil cans. These became coin drops for those of us that are collectors. It has a rebel flag on the back because he was not a South rebel, he was a nonconformist rebel. And so I had this oil cans made, and people could have their oil like that. Then he got into it with the S&H green stamp company. He wanted to have green stamps. And they said, no, you can't have green stamps because you have a competitor that's close by and they have green stamps and we don't allow them that close. Well, he was upset about that, and he said, okay, fine. So he went to other places that had green stamps and he bought them from them. And then he brought them back, and then he started giving them out, and green stamps said, you can't do that. He said, like hell I can't, they're mine, I bought them. And so he did for a period of time. Isn't that crazy? So there's all kinds of little books of stamps in it when we're done here, if you want to come up and take a look at some of it. It's kind of fun to see. I have some pictures here. We were featured in a couple of books that I just was honored to be in. This one is Highway 99, which was the original name and not McLaughlin Boulevard. And there's our picture. That one is on the front of it, and it has all the different businesses along 99 back in the era. And so we're featured on the front of it, which I thought was really cool. And then we have this book, which has got, thank you, Jerry. This is and it has we're featured inside of that one. You don't have to find it, it's all right. Anyway, what an honor to be included in some of those. They're real collector's items, so. See? Right there. Crazy. So, anyway, I won't bore you with more than I've told you, but after Terry does her presentation, if you have questions, we're game to answer anything we can, so please hang out and we'll go from there, okay? So here's my daughter-in-law, Terry Scott.
Art Lacey, those stories go on and on. I've heard Punky talk about some of his gambling episodes, and it just never ends. So I never tire of her stories about the Lacey's and getting the bomber here and all his carryings on while he was with us, and it just never stops, never ends enough. I want to keep it going. Our next speaker that I'm going to introduce is Terry Scott. Terry is the executive director of the B-17 Alliance, together with her husband, the grandson of the late Art Lacey, and the encouragement of Punky Scott. They created and built the non-profit B-17 Alliance Foundation. Terry's dedication to B-17 Alliance began in 1999 when she headed Operation Recall, or is it Recall? Recall, celebration with KOIN TV to screen and record 32 World War II veterans professionally in the studio. This process instilled in her a strong patriotic affection for the personal stories and sacrifice and the humble nature of our valued citizens of World War II. This passion drives her to lead this rare volunteer collaboration that is returning the once world famous gas station bomber, now the B-17G Lacey Lady, to fight as a centerpiece for a World War II education center. So with 30 years of management experience, Terry's broad background and can-do attitude feeds the success of the B-17 Alliance Museum and Restoration Hangar to annually provide tours for 6,000 guests, education over 1,500 students, is returning the gas station bomber to her original flying glory, collected and archived over 200 World War II veterans' stories for the museum, a one-of-a-kind aviation and World War II history library with over 3,000 books and references, conducts veterans outreach to thousands of veterans annually, and engages over 150 volunteers to provide them with a unique purpose-driven life. Terry makes me look like wet behind the ears. Amazing. So please welcome Terry Scott, an entertainer who is honored to share the journey of the B-17 Alliance with all who are interested. Terry.
I don't think I need to talk now because he told you everything. No, I got a slideshow for you. I'm really honored to be here, and I'm so honored to see a full room. Thank you so much for being here. I always love hearing Punky's story, and every time I hear her talk, which has been quite a few times, by the way, I learn something new. So thank you, Punky, for sharing.
What did I share this time?
I can't remember, my brain is a sieve. That's what she always says to me. I did bring this is the story of the bomber on a 2-page flat form, and she didn't really actually finish the story about the bomber coming over at 2 o'clock in the morning, so you might want to pick it up, and there's more to it there too. But I'm going to take you to the next step. So where is the bomber, right? What is going on with it? The plane disappeared. Where's it at? I'm going to tell you all about that. So we formed a nonprofit, thank you. We formed a nonprofit, B-17 Alliance. And I'm going to tell you about that too. So B-17 Alliance honors the American spirit of our greatest generation. That's why we started with the Pledge of Allegiance and the Star-Spangled Banner. It is my privilege to always be able to teach children to do that. In fact, I have a Flag Day coming up where we're going to teach people the etiquette of flag and how to use it. And we're asking children, students, churches to come and gather and let's celebrate the American flag. We are preserving American history, we're educating generations, and we're inspiring community under the wingspan of 102 wingspan of a B-17. So Art Lacey flew the bomber to Oregon in 1947 on a $5 bet. I don't know, Punky, didn't talk about that, did you? Yeah, so the $5 bet, the guy said, hey, no, you can't, and he said, yes, you can. No, I don't want to tell them about the sign. I don't know that story. Do you want to tell them?
There's a kick about that sign. Del Johnson was a friend of my dad's, and he said, I want to develop a trailer park for people, and the county won't let me do it. They're just giving me all kinds of heck. And Dad said, well, just do it anyway. And so he did. He developed the land over on Johnson Road, over in Clackamas. And it's a huge park. It's beautiful, very nicely done. And so Dad said, just put in however many people you want to have at your city and call it a city and tell them to get the county to get lost. So he did. And so Del gave my dad that sign, and it's Bomber City, 50,000 people or less.
I really needed her to tell that story because we feature it in our museum, and I can't ever remember why it's there. So that's good. So what would you do if you had a B-17 in your front yard? Right? Think about that. So my husband convinced the family that it was a rare artifact, that they weren't building them anymore, and that we needed to treat it differently than a sign, which was a big deal because it was the gas station bomber. It was iconic treasure, and people didn't want it to go anywhere. So it was a long process. It's been quite a journey. There's less than 50 remaining in the world, and we have one in Oregon. We actually have 2 in Oregon. The Lacey Lady is one of 10 capable of flying. The rest of them, there's many that are not capable of flying, and we have, the Lacey Lady is very capable of flying. She has the lowest airtime miles of any B-17 in the world. She's never went to war. She's a peace plane, I like to say. She represents all the men and women who served valiantly for our country. And she is the centerpiece now for a World War II education center. So this is the original nose art that we had created. We used the Lacey name. We created a Lacey Lady that's patriotic, loves her country, is a leader of women, and just serves the community. That's what the Lacey Lady stands for, and that's the original nose art that we created for the B-17. So the B-17, we took it down, it disappeared, but here it is in sections on a trailer. So the B-17 was actually designed to be taken apart and fit on a semi-truck trailer, and that is exactly what we did. I don't have my pointer. Is this a pointer? It is. So this is the section of a wing on the trail, and there was several of those. These are our ailerons, and this is a big wide open hangar. It's beautiful. It took us 5 years to find that location. There's the fuselage being moved in. So we moved the plane. It took us about 9 months to take it apart. You might remember it sitting out on the front of the B-17 bomber property, and we had to segment it. So this was this section was a very fragile part, and we were really concerned about it because it had the most corrosion from the pigeons underneath. And we were really concerned that when we moved it, it would collapse, and that would be the end of everything. But we were able to move it without hurting anything. The other thing is that we were able to move it and no one even broke a fingernail, basically. It was so blessed. Everything that happened was safe, and we were able to transport it to Salem. So this is what's going on now. A complex restoration is underway, racking up accomplishments. And I'm here to tell you today about it, and I'm hoping that you'll come and see for yourself firsthand at the Salem Airport. So we have a full-fledged hangar. That's what it looks like when you come in. We have it's 80 by 80 hangar inside with a museum section and office space and a gift shop. We're there to tell the stories of a great generation. They are amazing. Like I said in the introduction, that I have been interviewing veterans for over 2 decades. And their stories, their humble spirit, their determination to serve a country, to never take no for an answer. Art Lacey was one of them. because they had a job to do and they did it. And I am so honored to dig into these stories and share those things with our communities and our children. Here I am interviewing a World War II vet who was a POW. He's telling me that when he came out, he was 90 pounds. He had the privilege of eating black soup. Does anybody know what black soup is? He didn't either. It was broth with bones floating in it. It breaks my heart today still that he went through that. But he had no regrets because he was serving his country. And he knew that we were now a free country because of his service. We tell the stories of World War II in all eras, at home, at abroad. This is a story about a Navy couple. This is one of our featured exhibits. It's a romantic story about a secret code map and a communication device that this man had made to his wife. And it's a beautiful story, so I encourage you to come and see it. Everything is authentic, and World War II, do you want to take a picture of that? I can take it back. Everything is authentic. It's been donated to us from the families. One of the reasons we started it was we had the gas station and the restaurant, and all the veterans flocked to the restaurant a lot. And they would tell us their stories, and then they would have their uniforms and their things that they had in their family that maybe nobody wanted, and they were going to be thrown away. And Punky said, no, don't throw them away, we'll take them. And so we started collecting them. Well, then we had to have a place to put them. So we created the museum. We also have the library that we talked about. It's an aviation and World War II focused library. We get a lot of books donated, so we're constantly weeding through, keeping the best ones, and making it a very themed oriented for aviation and World War II history. We are right now featuring a diorama that was a world-class, has won 23 top awards. It toured the nation before it came to us, and it's an authentic diorama, the most beautiful model of a B-17 that I've ever seen, and is featured in the museum. It's in 1947, so it tells the story of the gas station during that era. And Punky was interviewed by this gentleman for 2 years while he created it. It's quite phenomenal. And he donated it to us. He told us that the diorama was worth about $10,000. Pretty amazing. He brought it from Texas with his family. That was his family. So we also have a 28-foot trailer. Inside this trailer is an exhibit that we travel to festivals and outings and cruise-ins. Yes, I knew I recognized you. We'll be at the Timber Park on July 12th with it. So it's been a wonderful gift to us from the Morgans and the people that support us so that we can share the stories of the greatest generation and go out in the community. We also have a ball turret and a talk turret that we take. This is here a gentleman sharing about the ball turret gunner. These are some artifacts this guy's sharing with young. Look at them. They're really into it. They really like hearing this history. People tell me, oh, the kids don't care. The kids care. You just have to get at their level and engage them. This is the top turret. So this item here is an actual B-17 top turret that we purchased for $25,000. It was donated by Charlie and Sharon Miller. This is Brad Olson. I thought maybe some of you might know Brad. He's inside the top turret there. Anyway, these are the two gentlemen that created this carriage so that we could take it out and the kids can sit in the chair and pretend like they're a top turret gunner. There's another, so you can see that this is the ball turret and the people are gathered around. It's like a magnet. People are very interested. Some people know what it is, some people don't. So we enjoy telling them stories about the ball turret gunner. We met a ball turret gunner one time who was 6 feet tall. That's pretty tall to get inside that little thing. One of the things that's such a blessing is that we met a lot of World War II vets along the way. This is actually right out in front of our facility, and this plane is visiting us. This is Stanton Rickey. He was a 3-war veteran. He was a POW and a B-17 pilot. This is Jim Street. He was a B-17 pilot. They met at our Veterans Coffee Club. They discovered that Stanton Rickey had been shot down and became a prisoner of war, and Jim Street's fleet took over for him. So that's the kind of cool stuff that happens at Veterans Coffee Club when you get veterans together. Jim Street also got to sit in the pilot seat again. This is him receiving the Distinguished Flying Cross. Look how young he is. He was the leader of the crew. He tells a story about saving an entire town in Italy. That town was going to be under heavy German fire, so his squadron was called in to come and save them. They disarmed all of their B-17s and left everything at home so they could put the entire town in their B-17s. They stacked those people, those farm people, on top of each other, laying on each other, lined up against the sides of the B-17s, and they pulled out of the farm fields with their tails dragging as the machine gun fire was coming in, and they saved the whole town. I know. It just amazes me. He went back to Europe, as a lot of the crews would do. And the town treated him like royalty. They had a special dinner for him. They had a monument in the town for their crew. That story inspires me to do what I do, because I want the veterans of all eras to understand how important they are to our country. So we continue to do things for the veterans, so they know that they are loved. We have the Veterans Coffee Club every third Thursday. And it's a free social gathering where we serve coffee and pastries and have special guests to come. It's at the Salem Hangar. So you could do a tour, come on down, and enjoy the show. We are inspiring our community to really admire them. This was when the B-17 came to town, and we did a red carpet treatment, and we had photo ops for all the different eras and the different departments of military service. While honoring the American spirit and helping people understand how lucky we are to be Americans. We're bringing in young people to help do the tasks involved. Look at, they're shining a B-17 up. Look how beautiful it is, and they're actually helping. That's what we want to do. We want to get them involved and give them some pride in ownership of America. This is our family. This is our volunteer crew, just a few of them. A few that helped get this event together with this B-17 that's coming again in August. This is student education. This is Rhett. He's 11 years old. He is an old soul, and he loves to come and hang out with the B-17 crew. Over here we're giving a student tour. This is Bob, and he loves to give the tours, and we're telling the stories of the greatest generation. And we're actually teaching them to work on the plane too. This is a high school student group that is looking and learning how to do blueprints and all the things that we need. We actually use the Boeing blueprints to do everything we do. This is Jack, who's rebuilding the cockpit section. You can see it all the way around him. We train each other. So these are retired Boeing workers, retired Air Force, retired airliners, people that worked at the airlines, and then they teach anyone. Anyone who wants to know will find you a spot, because there is a lot of work to be done. This is a huge job. And they love it. This is Nick. He's a fabricator and a welder, and he helps us with all of our fixtures. This is a skilled volunteers training new volunteers. So this is where we started. I'm going to just quickly go through Wing 1. Wing 1 started at like this. This is what it looked like. And lots of components. Look at all that stuff that had to be taken out, and then we have to find it when we're done, right? So you've got to take it out, tag it, inventory it, put it away where you can find it, be able to catalog it so you can find it. There is a lot to it. And then each piece has to be marked. And you see all those thousands of pieces in the Boeing schematic. We have all the diagrams. This was a jig that we created to turn them. So that wing now, this is now that same wing, and we've taken it down to this, but it still weighs 3,000 pounds. And so we created this jig, which kind of took about 6 months to do, because it had to be exact, it had to be safe, it had to do this. He's barely using any muscles to turn it. And then we turned it over so we could work on it again on the other side, until it was down to the spar. So that is the spar. The spar is like the inner side of the wing. It's the thing that keeps the wing strong, and it's extremely important to be perfect. This is a 2-flight restoration. Everything has to be exact, and our crew is doing that. So the spar has been under inspection. It was under inspection for like a year. We had bought cameras to go inside of it. We did a lot of different things to make sure that it was sound before we started the rebuild again. So that is wing number 2, and we'll use it as a pattern. Now, I didn't have any current pictures to show you where we're at, but we are rebuilding wing number 1 now, so you'll have to come and see it. It's pretty amazing. Every part has to be replaced. So this is a brand new sheet metal, and this is the old, and we have to build patterns. This is a sample of a pattern, how we had to come up with everything to make that piece. And this doesn't just happen overnight. Sometimes they'll work 3 days on this piece to make it exact so they can do this, because you can't go down to the local hardware store and buy it. You have to figure it out and build it yourself. So that's what these volunteers are doing. This guy that's holding that, he's actually a retired teacher, and he taught, I think, in the automotive. This is Jack again, so now he's got the new pieces all made, and even the new pieces over here. See, each little piece has to be reconstructed. And he's rebuilding. This is way far along now, where you saw the green where he was putting it together, but gives you an example of how the nose section, which you might have seen over at the old museum, is being re-updated, and then we're doing this section, and we had to match it to that section, and it has to be exact. So we had to create this jig in order to make it so we could hold everything in the middle, and when they fit together, ultimately in the long run, they will be perfect. So there's Jack and some of the crew. You can see there's a lot of guys that come to on a good day, we have 10 or 15 guys working, and so it's pretty awesome. And they all have, these other guys teach them how. This is George, he's a crew lead, Jack's a crew lead, this guy's soon to be a crew lead. They just all have found their spot, and they all make it happen. It's a good thing, because I don't know how to restore a plane. There we are, so it's a little bit more of an idea of what's going on with the cockpit. It's even further along than that now. We have been making partners around the nation. One of the partners that we have is Erickson Aircraft. Erickson has money, you know, they have some big job where they make a lot of money, and they've actually started restoring B-17s for money now. We're doing it because of our love for B-17s, but they're kind enough, this is the owner's grandson right here, and they're kind enough to share knowledge with us, so they let us go on a field trip and look at their stuff. This is Jack taking pictures of the inside of the cockpit so that he can go home and remember how it all comes together. It just helps to see it for real. This is Joe, and he's rebuilding the ailerons of the wing, and so now he gets to see them put together, because he actually never got to see it put together. He only saw it after it was taken apart, and now he's going to put it back together. Pretty amazing. So this is our hangar. It's very full. There's all the different things. There's a stage of the wing when it was being taken apart, the firewalls, and then a whole big bird's eye view of the fuselage. It's very full. So our immediate short-term goal is to sustain ourselves so that we will be here for the duration of time. And the number one thing that we need to do is purchase our hangar, because we're paying right now a pretty good mortgage. And it's very expensive because, as you know, after COVID, interest rate went up a lot. But our landlord gave us a really great opportunity. I asked this question because I know that you all know who we are and where we came from. I don't know that I even knew how successful this would be. It is amazing what is happening at the Salem hangar. There is so much positive and life-giving things going on. Jason and I, the very first time that we went there and we called out to the volunteers of Salem, we had 100 people swarming the hangar when we showed up to work. We couldn't believe it. God has really blessed it. It's pretty amazing. So we have an opportunity to purchase our hangar. We couldn't find a suitable hangar easily. It took us 5 years to find the one we are at now. And we actually went all over Oregon trying to find a good spot to be that we could afford. And when this building was presented to us, it was very affordable, and it was a good spot for us, and it worked. If we tried to move the Lacey Lady now, it would jeopardize her structural integrity. If we, moving her now would be detrimental to the restoration. It would slow us down tremendously, so we can't. But our landlord has given us a once-in-a-lifetime chance to purchase our own hangar. And we're on the way, and we have raised $50,000 to do it. 50% of what we need, which is $400,000. We need a total of $800,000 to purchase our hangar, and we're 50% there. I can't believe it. It's pretty amazing. So we're ready for takeoff. So we're here today to tell you about it. We just did our membership drive. We did a huge event on May 17th for Armed Forces Day, and it was a wonderful event despite the weather trying to shut it down. But we had a car cruise in and all kinds of fun stuff, and it was a good event. We always want to honor the American spirit of all of our military. On August 18th to the 25th, the B-17, Flying Legends Tour will be on site for the entire week. That'll be the B-25 and the B-17. We'll do a welcome event, veterans lunch, a dinner with the pilots, and much, much more. So come on down for a tour inside the aircraft. And if you're lucky, you can buy a flight for $450 for 20 minutes in one of the airplanes. And then they do that on their own website. We don't sell the flights, they sell the flights, and that is at that one right there, AZCAF, that's where you buy the flights at. Okay? So here we are. Your support really matters. And I am so grateful that you're here to find out where the B-17 went. And now you know a little bit about it. It's a glimpse of what's going on in the hangar at Salem Airport. We're open for tours Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays from 10 to 4. You can bring your students, you can bring your groups. We do educational tours for students like I am doing on Flag Day. I'm going to be doing, this is some of our sponsors, I can't forget to talk about them because they're the reason we exist. Some of you might know Bill McCracken, this is Dr. Ken Chung. There's just a lot of wonderful people supporting the cause. These are posters you can buy online and they give us the proceeds. Our crew is so happy to work together. We'll have an annual recognition barbecue the week that the B-17 and the B-25 are here. So please, tell your friends, join our events, volunteer, donate, ask us questions. We're here and we're just grateful that you're here.
I have a couple of things I forgot to tell you about. One of them was Dad moving the airplane from Troutdale to Milwaukee.
Oh yeah, that was the part you left out.
He went to get a permit and they wouldn't give it to him because it was too big and too whatever. And so he decided, hell with it, I'm going to do it anyway. So he hired teenagers to ride along with him in their hot rods. And he also hired a motorcycle escort for funerals. And the motorcycle guy's out in front in black leathers. He looks very official. And so it looked like there was a police officer that was leading him. And then the teenagers in their hot rods. And Dad said, now if the cops show up, you burn rubber in another direction and I'll pay any tickets that you get. So never had any problem. And the only story that I ever heard that was a possibility was that some guy had been drinking and he's driving along and he sees an airplane coming at him and he goes off down into the ditch. But now whether that's the truth, I don't know. Anyway, then Dad was in trouble because he had done it without permits. And but there were two newspapers in Portland at the time, the Oregonian and the Journal. And apparently the Journal did an article saying, local government tries to keep bomber from final resting place. And boy, the theme was on Dad's favor. And so he was fined $10 by Judge Thiessen Road. She was the Justice of the Peace, and at that time she had authority to do that. So anyway, he paid the fine, and we've been out there ever since. Isn't that crazy? The other quick story is that our insurance company estimated that we had over 1 million people go through the airplane. Dad replaced the wooden floors 7 times, so that's a lot of visitors. And we had a couple of famous people young people who spent some serious time playing in the airplane. John Denver. Yeah, he was here visiting, and his family would make sure that he got a chance to go up and hang out in the airplane, as a youngster. And then Dick and Bert Rutan, and I don't know if that name rings a bell at all to you, but the Rutan brothers were famous in aviation and breaking sound barriers and that kind of thing. So anyway, we had plenty of people. The reason that we closed it to the public was we had a little boy fall out. If you saw these pictures of the plane, we had a stairway at the front and a stairway at the back. And Dad had put a sign up that said, "No children without an adult." And so this family came in to buy gas, and the dad decided to take the boy up into the airplane, and while Mom stayed in the car. Well, as the time progressed, the gas was completed, and she didn't have any money to pay for it. So she's trying to get a hold of the dad, and so he comes down and he goes to pay for it, and he leaves the little boy up in the airplane. Well, I happened to be standing right at the base of the stairway at the front of the airplane, and all of a sudden, boom, this little boy falls out on his head right at my feet. And Mom is screaming at the dad, and the dad lifts him up. My dad wanted to take him to a hospital. There weren't any great hospitals in the area at the time. And no, they wouldn't. Well, we ended up in a lawsuit, and they won, of course, and it was $50,000, which doesn't sound like anything now, but back then it was significant. So that was the end of having the plane open to the public. So, and people, of course, missed that, but over 1 million people went through it. So, anyway.
How do I follow that? Well, so one of the other surprises was that the story, the family story, you know, like I said, we're collecting the stories of the World War II generation, and that's what makes up our museum. But the volunteers and the guests, they all want to hear the family story. So it's part of the museum as well, and it's a big feature in there. And I'm really honored to be a part of that family. And I want to thank the history detectives for having us here today. I've known about them for a long time, and I know Punky's involved with them, and I just thank you so much for letting us be here today.
I don't know, there it is. I don't know about you guys, but I am inspired. I have a confession. I have never been down to Salem to see this plane and this museum, but I will now. Remember, they need our help. And they need everybody to pitch in as best they can. I know that there's lots of you out there that have questions you want to ask these two, and so if you have a question, raise your hand. We'll hand you a microphone, and we'll see what happens. How's that? Who has a question?
Nobody.
Back here.
Punky, Steve Berliner here. Hi. When Art moved it out to the site from Troutdale, was it able to have the wings on it? Did he go right down the middle of the street and cleared all the poles and everything?
Yes, it was fully intact. So that's why they weren't, I'm sorry, but?
When he transported it.
Yeah, when he transported it to Milwaukee, it was a complete airplane. So, and that's why they wouldn't give him any permits or anything. So, but he didn't take it apart then.
He didn't?
No,
I thought he did.
no.
Who else has a question? Here. I know this lady.
Punky and Terry, it's Thelma.
Oh, hi, Thelma.
Hi there. So my question, because I've been a volunteer down at the Bomber last Saturday, as a matter of fact, when the plane is all back together again, will it fit in the hangar?
Let me answer that.
So yeah, the hangar is 80 by 80. Thank you, Thelma. So we're purchasing this hangar, oh my word, my mouth doesn't want to work today. We're purchasing this hangar as an investment in our future. Number one, because we can't move, and number two, because we need to have this investment to move forward. And then as soon as we're done with this, we are going to be establishing a new location that will be the final resting place for the Lazy Lady. And that facility will be large enough for the 102-foot wingspan, as well as other military vehicles, other aircraft, whatever is donated to the nonprofit, a big section for the museum, an English pub, some sustaining informational things that will keep us moving forward for the longevity as a destination point. So no, it is not big enough, and we will need to go bigger.
More questions? Over there.
Will the restaurant reopen? Is that property still there, your property?
She wants to know if the restaurant will be open, if the property's going to still be around.
Unfortunately, the restaurant is for sale. Yeah, the whole property is. We just don't have the means to maintain it anymore. COVID shut it down. It's broken our hearts, but we just can't do it. So we've all gone elsewhere for work, and Punky finally retired.
Are you talking about the flight deck?
No, the flight deck is there. We're talking about the Bomber Restaurant that is up here on McLaughlin Boulevard that was there for 70 years.
Thank you.
It was a family-owned business that started with Punky and her father, and then went into...
Father, not me,
I said Punky and her father. Well, whoever. You had it for 70 years. Your family had it for 70 years. And anyway, so that's the restaurant that we're not going to reopen. But we will have a eatery in our final destination point.
More questions? Punky, I have one for you before him. This is going to be a good one. You told me and my wife once a story about your dad gambling at that restaurant just north of Park Avenue and some of the escapades that went on there.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about
Yeah,
that.
well, he played poker there, and now it's a gun shop, but before it was a fireside, whatever, as I recall. Anyway, the basement was a gambling den, and so they'd be down there playing cards or whatever, and they'd always have one person standing on the porch up above smoking a cigarette. And then if the cops showed up, he'd stomp real hard, and that would signal to him downstairs to hide everything. So that's what it worked out fine. Yeah, so there was plenty of places. And as a little girl, Mom and I moved out of our trailer house into the back of the restaurant. Dad had built a restaurant. Somebody told him people are going to need to buy gas, and they're going to need to eat, and they're going to need some place to stay. And so anyway, we lived in the back of the restaurant. It was kind of a unique spot. So Dad, our dining room table was a big round table with a green felt cover and a light that pulled down over it so he could gamble there. And I slept in a bunk bed, and I never thought a darn thing about it. You know, here they were gambling late into the night, and I'm sleeping there, no big deal. But my dad was a really good cook, and he loved to feed lots of people. He helped his grandfather cook when they were at logging camps as a young boy. So he knew how to do big volumes of food, and I celebrated my 10th birthday. Dad did in fact, I think you have a story about it, about how many hundreds of people they invited and fed them all. So no big deal. I don't know. What do you remember? How many people?
The stories just go on and on
Yeah, I
and
don't want to
on.
bore people.
I would love to hear all of them.
That's my question. Those stories are great, and I'm wondering, have you ever thought of putting it together in a book? And
Yes and
writing them
no.
all
I've
down?
had some people that we've had articles written about it, but not the whole thing. And had a couple of people that said they were interested in doing it, but never went any further than that. So
Well, you got to get on that.
yeah, I might not survive long enough to put it all together.
So, but on that note, I have been collecting the stories because I see the value in it. And in fact, I just got a story from the little receptionist across the way that couldn't make it to this event. And she said that she had a story that was precious about her father and her eating at the Bomber restaurant. And that she loved eating there with her father, and it was good memories. And I asked her to give me that story because there'll be a lot of ways for us. The videotape over the generations to come, we'll be collecting those stories and putting them together and things. I'm hoping to write a book, a cookbook that tells the stories of the families and where the recipes came from. It's gonna take me 10 years, but I'm gonna do it. So we're collecting those stories because I know how valuable they are. And I just keep putting them in the archives until someone has time to put it together.
So not only was the Bomber a famous gas station and known worldwide and definitely by everybody, anybody and everybody that lived in this general area, it was a landmark. It was used as the reference point for everything around here. You know, it's everything, every business, every trolley stop, whatever it was X number of miles south of the Bomber or whatever. You know, it was all relative to the Bomber. And besides the gas station and the airplane, the restaurant was a gathering place in this community for all those years. And I can vouch for that. When we were trying to save Concord School, we met there repeatedly to have meetings and discuss our strategy. Other hands?
Yeah, right here.
Punky, as the daughter of a pilot, did you ever aspire to be a pilot yourself?
Never.
Really? Oh, man.
No, I never had any burning desire to be a pilot. My son, Terry's husband, he definitely was into aviation, and in fact, he's the one that inspired us. You know, we've got to take this plane down and get it out of the weather and do something with it. And so I would hope that if I don't live long enough to actually see it fly, I want my ashes in the airplane and sprinkle me out somewhere, and I'd like to see my son Jason be the pilot, so that would be really cool.
That'd be awesome. Yeah.
That would be awesome.
Yeah. So it's Thelma again. I know that a lot of the people in this room are not going to be able to get to Salem and go through the museum. Would you tell the story of the secret code?
Thelma, I'll try. I just gave a tour the other day. I don't give tours very often anymore, but I did try. I was very good friends with Dottie Tunstall, and that's how we got the story. And the Tunstals came to the restaurant, and they would come to our initial fundraisers too as well. And one day they came and they had this little box, and inside the box was a folded up map. So Bill Tunstall was a Navy man, and he served on 3 different ships. And one of those ships was the Doolittle Raiders ship. And so he was out in the sea for a long time. And you know how you feel when you know where your family members are. You have a sense of peace when you know where they are. So he created 2 maps, one for himself and one for her. And on the maps were salutations. And each salutation would say, "My dearest darling, my dear pet, how I love thee." He was this romantic, amazing guy. He always loved his bride. And he talked to her like she was a bride until their departure after 55 years. He would put these in the different salutations, and when he wrote a letter, he would start the salutation with where he was at on the map. So, "My dearest Dorothy," and you would look and you'd find "My dearest Dorothy," and you'd know that he was right there. So that gave her a sense of peace, and she told me that she knew that he would be home. Well, what she didn't know that he was going to go up in the canals, the Panama Canal area, and he didn't put any salutations there. He was there for 6 months. The family thought he was gone. So finally, he came out of the canal, and then he wrote to her with a new salutation, and they knew he was okay. One of the things that happened was that when the Doolittle Raiders were taking off of his ship, he was sick. He was in sick bay. But he knew that something amazing was going on. So he went up to see what was going on. And one of the pilots said, "Hey, I want to give you my wallet so you can give it to my wife, because I'm not going to come back." And Bill was like, "No, you're going to come back. You keep your wallet. You keep your wife's picture." Well, he didn't come back. And Bill held that in his heart for a long time. He was a very sensitive guy. But you know, Bill did a lot of things through his life, and he continued to always share the stories. You know, he was a true patriot, and then he gave this map to us, and it was a treasure in their life. But now we can tell their story and tell generations and generations about that.
Thank you. We have another question in the back here.
Where are all the artifacts that were in the restaurant now?
Most of them are still in the restaurant. Don't tell your friends. One of the things about museums is storage is an issue because you have to pay for storage. So we have a storage unit that we're keeping overflow, but the museum is full, and what we try to do is rotate things. Most of the artifacts in the restaurant are things that we created for the restaurant, and at some point they'll be in the new museum. And including, I want to get the totem pole and take it to the new museum.
So Thelma is monopolizing the back of the room here.
We're gonna get this guy next. Okay.
Well, just to give you the rest of the story about Bill Tunstall. Bill ended up coming to work for the telephone company in Portland here on the test desk, and he was one of the supervisors in the same area that I worked in. So I knew Bill very well.
He was a wonderful man. He really was.
Well, I have several stories and a long history on the boulevard here. I'm the former owner of Pete's Lair Tavern. It's now the Lair Tavern Barbecue, about 4 miles south of the Bomber. We've been there, my family's been there 60 years this year, since 1965. And that building was built in 1946. It's a log cabin down here if you visit it. So it's a wonderful place now that my name's not on the top of the roof. But, anyway, I have a story. When I first came back from Vietnam in 1969, I got a job just down the street here at a carpet place that laid carpet. So some of the guys, my dad's customers at the tavern, they came in the tavern there, so that's how I got the job laying carpet. Well, we would get, on Fridays, we'd get a check, we'd get our paycheck. Well, the only thing was, they said if you want to cash your paycheck, you got to run down to the Bomber and cash it. And he must have had some kind of deal with either your mom or dad or something about, we'll cover this guy's checks. So we'd all try to get done early on Friday afternoon and get our paychecks and rush down here to the Bomber, and he would cash our checks. But if you were late getting there, well, we can't cash it. So there must have been some kind of dollar limit to cash those checks. Well, I was working late one time and I got down there too late, and they said, well, we can't cash your check for you. So I made the mistake of putting it in the bank. Well, of course, it bounced. The check bounced, and it screwed me up for a week. So from then on, I always tried to get down here early to cash my check. But that's one of my memories. And the other memory is always coming down here to have a chicken fried steak. It's hung out. I love chicken fried steaks, and they were so big they'd hang off both ends of the plate. I remember that, and you could get a good meal. And anyway, and the other thing that I've been told by Punky is that way back when she was a young kid, she played the accordion at the Lair Tavern. I don't know the whole story, but she's told me that, so I've been trying to get her to come down and play the accordion again on some night to do it. Well, I'm no longer there, but I still think you ought to do it. Well, we could get you accordion. You come down there. Well, you do. Well, Mark would love to have you come down and play on karaoke night or something. Anyway, that's my story.
And you're sticking to it.
My dad loved Dick Contino, and he was an accordion player way back when, and so as a little girl I had to learn to play the accordion, and we would take it on camping trips, and I'd sit out there by the fire and play the accordion. And Duke was the owner, or involved with from the Lair Tavern, and so I would go down there and entertain guests. So,
8 years old? How old were you?
Yeah, 8 or 10, who knows. The other remembrance I have of the accordion was I would play for different groups that would be gathering and friends of my dad's or whatever. And I can remember going to this one party, and the man comes over to me and he says, "Could you play Happy Birthday for my wife? It's her birthday." I didn't know how to play Happy Birthday. I could play Lady of Spain and all these other things, but I couldn't play. I said, oh, okay, well, but I want everybody to sing. So I stood kind of next to her, and I played the first note and faked it and then played the last note. And as far as they know, I played Happy Birthday. Isn't that crazy?
Like I said, these stories just go on and on and on. I want to thank you, Punky and Terry.
Thank you for letting us be here. It was just so
stories you want
enjoyable.
to share?
I probably, when I go home, and I'll wake up in the night and say, "Oh hell, I should have shared that."
Well, thank you everybody for coming. We really appreciate your being here. We want you to support the bomber, the B-17 bomber, and the History Detectives. Thank you for coming.